Some of
Yeah.
the biggest mistakes that I've seen personally people make, and I'm so sorry if this offends anyone that's listening, but just sending out a postcard that has your pricing on it or
Oh,
has your guarantees on it, it probably didn't work for you. And you're probably one of the people that say, oh, Outbound doesn't work. Well, yeah, because your messaging wasn't specific enough. Being able to come in and say, we solve this specific problem or we help you do this, that is where you can really, really start to see some magic happening here because you're specific and you're finding a person. And that is why the ideal customer profile is so important.
all right, folks, welcome in to another episode of Outbound on Air. I'm one of your hosts, Ben. I'm joined by Kristen, and today we're excited to get more deep into Outbound. We're going to be talking about messaging and ideal client, and our goal is to give you, as always, actionable insights that you can use in your business right away, get through the stage of thinking about doing and start executing. So, Kristen, I'm really excited about this topic because I think it's one of the things that holds people back a little bit, right? You know that there are people out there that you could work with, but who are they and what do you say to them? So, excited to dive in, and I want to kick it off with this first question to you, Kristen. I think most people have probably heard this idea of ideal client profile. I'm curious, what does that mean to you, and why is it important for somebody in the property management space?
Yeah. So I think that determining the ideal customer, I think your first question was who is that? What is that?
Yeah,
And
well,
so
yeah, what is it and how is it why is it important?
perfect. So our ideal customer is the ideal person who's going to fit into the way that our processes are designed. And so this is something that we talk about in the sales side, but I found it so true to carry over to the operations side as well. And
Yeah.
it really does come from our ops side of who is it that our processes are designed to serve, because I think that it varies from company to company. Some people are really, really high touch. They want to be on the phone, they want to call people. That works really well for like an accidental landlord or a
Mhm.
first time investor, somebody who wants to be involved in the process. And then other companies are like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to, have conversations. That works generally better with our investor clients. And so I think it really depends on how our processes are set up for us to determine the ideal customer. And the reason that we want that on the sales side is because as we're going through and as we're selling, we want to make sure that we are selling to the right person and we are tailoring our messaging, our marketing, everything it is that we're doing around this customer that we are looking to attract. Now, some people have like a lot of questions on this, Ben, because I've seen some conversations going back and forth over the last couple of weeks of how specific this ideal customer profile needs to be. And for me, I think that I leave it a little bit more generalized here whenever I'm working on this with customers because I want there to be a checklist essentially. I want us to have maybe 5 characteristics that we're looking for. And if we hit more than half, then that's a great customer for us. And so there is also, I may just be ranting here or like going
That's good.
off, but then there's people that don't care about the customer and really just want to be property specific focused. And
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
that for those people that want to be property specific, we may be bringing on wrong fit clients more times than not. And we need to make sure that we're really diving in here and we're understanding who do we want to sell to, not just who they are demographically, but also mindset wise. How much do they want to be reached out to? Really just kind of getting into how they want to be communicated with to make sure that our processes are then designed to serve that customer. So throwing that back over to you, Ben,
Yeah.
how do you think about this? How do you approach this idea?
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there to unpack. I think that the kind of the overarching principle that you touched on, right, is being specific enough that one, you're going to be able to serve that client, right? Like you have you have things about the way that you do business
Right.
that this type of person would appreciate or resonate with. Like, I think that's important because it's really easy. Like, just take what you and I do, right? We work with salespeople, sales leaders, right? If we were just like, hey, I help salespeople get better, right? We're casting such a wide net that in reality, like that message and that appeal probably lands with very few. of our audience. But if we put it in the property management world, it's I work with people who own rental properties. Okay, that's great. Like you get lots of people that come to you. You're probably not turning people away because they don't have, their rental isn't A class, which is what you work with. It's B, but yeah, well, it's not like you're saying no to that person. But in terms of, I think where this is really important for outbound is when we're trying to reach out to someone, the odds of them resonating with our message is pretty low if we're just very generic with it. Hey, I saw you own a rental property in Raleigh. I own a property management company, right? Versus, hey, we work with small investors who own between 2 and 5 properties, right? You know, they want someone to handle the day-to-day of this, right? Oftentimes our clients are hiring us because they're exhausted from having to lease, handle maintenance, right? Like I think looking at what it is that you do and maybe even looking at your best clients, like the clients that appreciate you most and say like, what is it about our service that really makes them love us so much? Like being able to ask that question of your current clients so that you can get clear on that. And then the flip side, I think, you kind of touched on this a little bit, is not getting so specific around like what you're looking for. I'm looking for properties that rent for between 1,600 and 1,800 in these 5 neighborhoods in my market, right? I maybe that is there's it's entirely possible there are people out there that take that approach. But I think the reality is you're making the pool so small that now it's like,
Yes.
man, I'm probably capped in terms of what I can get to from a growth standpoint. And the other thing, just, now I'm talking a lot. But the last thing I want to touch on that you said is that mindset piece. And it's
Mm.
like, well, you can't really, like if I'm using Discover, I'm using Prospect Now or Property Radar. There's not a search filter for mindset. You know what I mean? Like I can't go in and say, I want people that are never gonna email me in your search. So you are a little bit, you know, casting a little bit wide in the sense that even if we just said, hey, folks with 2 to 5 properties, that's
Right.
who I want to work with. There are 2 to 5 property owners who probably are more high touch than you would really want them to be, right? And so that's where if we are able to connect with them, we do want to do really good discovery to learn what type of client they're going to be.
I really liked what you said there about asking your clients what problems you solved for them or
Yeah,
really how your service has impacted them, because I think that understanding that gets us specific enough to then whenever we are doing the outbound, that messaging, because if it is too generalized, it doesn't land with anyone. Some of
yeah,
the biggest mistakes that I've seen personally people make, and I'm so sorry if this offends anyone that's listening, but just sending out a postcard that has your pricing on it or has
oh,
your guarantees on it, it probably didn't work for you. And you're probably one of the people that say, oh, outbound doesn't work. Well, yeah, because your messaging wasn't specific enough. Being able to come in and say, we solve this specific problem or we help you do this, that is where you can really, really start to see some magic happening here, because you're specific and you're finding a person. And that is why the ideal customer profile is so important, because when we can understand who it is that we're trying to work with what type of properties they have, and what problem we're solving, I think that those
yeah,
are the 3 key pieces that we need to be able to do successful outbound. I mean, the actual active outbound and the consistency behind it is what makes it happen, but this is probably the biggest piece of how you are successful with the consistency and everything else. And I think it's something that people undervalue because they stop at accidental landlord 1 property, or I want
yeah,
an investor with 5 properties. Okay, but what does that look like? What problem are you solving or what are you helping people to
yeah,
achieve? Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically that like, what's in it for me question, right? So if you're trying to get someone's attention, what's in it for them? If you're sending them a postcard that has your pricing on it, like that's not answering. They're not even
You're
aware of who you are,
you're
the
like
problem that
sending
you
them a
solve.
bill. You're sending them a
Right.
bill is what you're doing.
Y-
You're like, "It's gonna cost you
Yeah.
$400 a month to work with me." Like, that's what
It
you're saying to them.
it doesn't make sense. And I'll give an example that happened to me very recently. I actually posted about this on LinkedIn. I got a cold email, which happens all the time. I got a cold email from someone, and the email, it basically broke down like, hey, congratulations on launching your business. All right, so there's personalization number one. They know that I just launched a business. A lot of founders at your stage deal with this problem. And it was a problem I was actually having. Like, how about that? I wasn't aware of this company. I wasn't aware of what they do. I kind of understood conceptually what it was, but I wasn't out actively seeking it. And the fact that the message was specifically tailored to the position that I was in, I actually responded to it. And I had a demo with this person, right? And so I think where people get caught up is this idea of, I need to do something at such a large scale that I need to create a message that applies to all 1,000 on my list.
Mhm.
And really the only way to do that is if you're being so general in your criteria that you're saying rental property owners in my county or in this zip code. And yes, you can personalize a message that way. Hey, I see you own rental property in my county. But like being able to take it a step further to say, we work with landlords that own between 2 and 5 properties, or we work with landlords that live out of state but have real estate in this place, right? Like you've gone a step past what most people do, which is to just kind of blanket blast, right? No personalization,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. I know everyone wants to do a lot, and they want to do it at scale, and they want to do it efficiently, but I think it's just the world that we live in, that the best way to stand out is to be more specific, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I I guess my next question along those lines for you, you, I really liked what you said about looking at like, who do your processes serve, right? Could you maybe give a couple examples of how someone might look at their processes, the type of clients they work, how they're built to serve someone, and then use that as kind of a unique value proposition to prospects?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the very like just generalized process, or I'm sorry, touch points that we look at is
Yeah.
really how often are we picking up the phone, right? How
Yeah.
often are we making these personalized touch points to owners? If we really just want to do that once a year, then how we market that or we sell that is, you're a hands-off landlord. You don't have to worry about hearing from us. We're going to take care of everything. That's what that starts to look like there. So
Right.
to me, it's really the first place that we look at is just our personalized touch points that we have throughout the process. How involved do we actually want these owners to be? Now,
Yeah.
one that really comes to mind for me is within the marketing process. If we want a collaboration with the owners, we have some companies that we
Mhm.
work with that say, owner, what is your favorite parts about the property? What do you want to make sure that we market? And then
Yeah.
they're going to send them the listing description before it goes live. We're going to make sure that they have approval from it. That's a great process for people to have, but that is a touch point that is really important to your processes. So whenever you go and you're defining on your sales side and you're making these promises that, oh, you can be hands off, oh, you don't need to worry about it, and then you get to the marketing process and you need their approval and you need them to give you a green light to move forward, those two things don't match up.
Right.
Same thing in the renewal process as well. If you need the owner to explicitly give you approval before you move forward with a renewal, we cannot promise in our sales side that you're going to be a hands-off landlord, because we do
Yep.
need your help, right? We're going to need your help to approve this renewal to move forward. Whereas other companies will just say, no, it's in our property management agreement. It's at our discretion. We are going to move forward with the renewal. And so
Yep.
it's really looking at these key pieces within your processes of how involved do you actually need this owner to be. And then making sure that on your sales side, you're matching that 100%. If you don't pick up the phone once in your operations process, your sales process, whether that's outbound or inbound, should not include 150 phone calls. Because what you're doing there is you're setting that owner up for the expectation that I can call someone and I can talk to somebody at any time. I don't have
Mm.
to book a call. I don't have to do anything. We're letting them know from the beginning that I'm going to call, 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 call. Then they get to the operation side and essentially we've catfished them, right? We're like, no, yeah, you can call me, your
Right.
salesperson, but you could never talk to your property manager. So it's
Yeah.
making sure that your two sides are playing equally together. And if you are leading this like hands-off type of, you know, process, then on the sales side, we're going to lead with book a call with me. Find a time that's convenient for you, right? We're doing it on their schedule, not me calling them on a Tuesday afternoon. The two things just don't match there. And
Right.
so really examining the processes and how much involvement we need from the owners then determines for us, is our ideal customer actually our ideal customer, or is that just who we
Yeah.
think that we? Because I don't know
Yep.
about you, whenever you ask people, like, "Who do you wanna work with?" They're like, I want people that never email me, never call me, never do this." But then you need them 500 times in your operations process. You're not like, you probably have a very,
Yeah.
very low Google rating, like, you have one-star reviews from owners because you told them one thing and delivered something else. And so
Yeah.
it's just about making sure that those 2 sides match up.
Gosh, I double tap on that, right? Like the misalignment, right? Like, and I think what's really interesting to me, Kristen, I'm curious to know if you've heard this from people. How often do you hear property management companies say, this is a question I ask almost everybody. Our typical client is an accidental landlord that owns one property that they used to live in, or they inherited or something like that. But we want to work with investors. We want to work with people that have multiple properties. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you're relying on inbound, you probably are getting a lot of accidental landlords that they acknowledge I can't do this on my own,
Mhm.
right? Investors, you're probably more likely to have to go find them. I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with being in that position. But the point that you just made is really important because those are two different types of people, right?
Right.
And so if all of your process is built around this, like, very high touch, accidental landlords, they have lots of questions. We have to talk through a lot of stuff with them. They want a lot of control, and you're trying to go sell to a completely different avatar, then I think you need to be prepared to kind of talk through how your approach is different for each,
Right.
maybe, right? Like how are we serving these people based on what they need? So I think that's just, it's not, there's not a right or wrong, and there's not a right or wrong as far as like how you run your business. Like,
Mhm.
I think there are plenty of people who run very successful businesses, kind of taking that, like, it's not quite this extreme, but kind of that Amazon approach of like, you're not going to call us because you don't need to call us.
Right.
Everything you could ever need is available to you through your portal and
Right.
through resources we've built. And like, but that's a different style than the very high touch. Hey, we're gonna send the listing to you for your approval before we put it
Yeah.
up. So that misalignment piece, I think, is really critical, and you want to make sure that you're not promising a delivery of service to someone that is actually extremely different from the way that you run your business. So,
And something interesting that I've seen starting to take place in the industry is, tiered pricing plans.
mhm,
And whenever we're talking about tiered in the level of service, we're talking about tiered in the level of communication. To where
mm,
if you're trying to manage this property with us, we're actually going to charge you more money. And
mm,
if you are going to let us just handle the property, we're going to
yep,
charge you less money per month. Why? Because we need more manpower at the level
one,
where we're trying to do it together. We need somebody to call you. We need somebody to text you. We need to get you on the phone. It's going to take more hours of our time to get in there and do it. But that's how I've seen companies start to be able to service
yep,
both. Because right now, we're starting to see another rise of accidental landlords. We are seeing people
right,
that sell their property. We're in a good, that's in air quotes, position in property
yeah,
management because the real estate world is weird right now. And
right,
so, as we're looking at that, making accommodations to where companies who have traditionally served investors and have
yep,
great experience with that, now starting to take on accidental landlords are noting, okay, well, I'm not going to say no to a whole bunch of business because I've
yep,
got one company that refers out, no joke, like 30 deals a month they're referring out. Whereas
wow,
then it's like, are we missing opportunity here? Does this make sense for us to add in an additional pricing tier? Does this make sense for us to change processes for this specific avatar? And that's a business question that people have to answer for themselves, right? does it make sense for us financially to change our model? But that has been a very interesting way that I have seen people be able to accommodate kind of this rise here of what we're seeing with
Yep.
accidentals of, hey, I'll manage it with you, but I'm going to charge you 15% a month. And people are like, oh, okay, great. Sounds
Yeah.
fantastic. And then the expectations are very clear right up front.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons why getting that ideal client piece is so critical, right?
Mm,
And like you said, I mean, I think in a lot of ways it really starts with the operational side and what you're built to do. And so you have to be able to make those decisions. Worth noting, right? Like if you're going to be very specific about who you take on and who you work with and what you refer out or say no to, you need to set your salesperson up for success with that. If you have one, set them up for success, make sure they understand what it is you're looking for, give them kind of the right questions to ask to understand
mhm.
what situation the prospect might be in. And you also need to adjust your goals accordingly. Like you need to be realistic, right?
Right.
If you're going to be very specific, that means more people that you're gonna disqualify. And so I
Absolutely.
think that's you don't want to lose a good salesperson because you're telling them you don't want to work with half of the owners that they're bringing on board.
Or or you pay them a lot more in a base salary. Like, that is what I
Yes.
don't know your opinion on that, but to overcompensate for that, if you are super specific in your ideal customer and you are telling your BDM or your salesperson to say no
Mhm.
to so many of the people, you need to compensate them in a different way. Because if you're expecting them to hit goal, but you're also giving them these really tight criteria, you need
Right.
to make sure that that person is gonna stay on board, and if their compensation structure is, like, totally commission based, you are now out of alignment with your salesperson because if I'm having to give up somebody that likes me, that wants to move forward with the company, but you're telling me that I can't move forward with them and you've now cost me, your salesperson,
Yeah.
$400, we've got a problem. Like, wait, we are now beefing and that's just not okay for us
Yeah.
to be. And so making sure that that also makes sense as well whenever you're bringing on that salesperson into the
Yeah.
role.
Yeah. I think that we need to do a whole episode on incentives because I
Yes.
think I think that that's definitely a question that I get a lot from folks. So I think okay, so moving a little bit more into the messaging side
Mhm.
of things, right? And I really want to give people some tangible things to be thinking about here. I think a lot of what I see, and this is not property management specific, it's kind of all industries, right? Back to what you were talking about with the postcard. It's we have great prices, we have great service, we've been around for 40 years. Like I think that's kind of what people naturally gravitate towards. But I'm curious, like, what are some other ways you've seen or you think people should kind of look at what they do and say, this is a point of difference. This is
Mhm.
something that is a value add, right? And here's why. So I don't know. I'm curious your perspective on some of the things you've seen and heard or even did in your experience.
Yeah, one thing that I really like is utilization of case studies or success stories within your
Mhm.
business. How
Yep.
you have helped this person be able to accomplish this goal
Right.
and being able to use that in a way. One thing that we did whenever we were at Discover was had a letter. We would take actual financials and screenshots of how somebody's property performance had improved while working with a property management company. And to
Yep.
me, that is just such specific messaging because it is saying, hey, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and here are the results. And so
Yeah.
then you're giving people the opportunity to opt into that or not. And so I found that type of messaging of really showing what it is that we can do and how we do it and actual results to be a really great method. Now, it doesn't, the way that I did that originally was like a letter. Letters may not make sense for people to do,
Right.
but having that messaging based around success stories and things that we have actually done and actually help people do, to me, that's how we start to tailor our phone calls, our outreach, our marketing, our content, all of it around success stories. What would you add to that? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're presenting someone with a change from what they're doing, there's going to be fear around uncertainty. How is this going to go? Like, what's the risk for me, right? So I think case studies is a great way to differentiate. I think one of the things that has been a topic over the last couple years, there's been folks that have talked at conferences about this, and I've worked with folks who do this, but kind of that idea of like quarterly investor calls or biannual
Mm,
investor calls, right? Where you're meeting with your clients to talk about like what you said, like in performance, right? And how they're accumulating wealth with their real estate. And I think like something like that that's very proactive is a great thing to highlight to a prospect because one, you're positioning yourself as an advisor, right?
mhm,
And a big topic in the industry right now is this idea of asset management versus property management, right?
right.
Well, having those touch points with your client is an example of, hey, we're looking out for how your asset is performing. We don't just answer maintenance calls and
Mhm.
process the rent every month. Like we do more than that. And so like I think that's an example of a tangible thing that you can point to that says, hey, like this is how we actually help investors accumulate wealth, right? So maybe something like that is something to think about.
That's
I think
good.
another thing that comes to mind for me is, if you do in-house maintenance,
Mm,
right? Now, again, if you just put, hey, we have in-house maintenance on a postcard, like that's not going to mean a whole lot. But what it actually means to your customer is we know that we're getting fair, maybe even below market pricing for what we're doing. I mean, with inflation, I think everybody has experienced the cost of maintenance work
mhm.
orders going up. So, hey, this is an area we have control over. We're not relying on outside vendors. You don't have to worry about getting gouged on pricing because we have our people and they know what they're doing. They're trusted resources. I was talking to a client recently who was talking about how they use in-house maintenance as their differentiator, just from a standpoint of like, hey, when somebody's going out to the property, it's one of our employees and they're
Yeah,
trained
that's huge.
to look for certain things, right? Do I, is there a dog in hiding in the closet that's not a non-approved pet, right? Like, if you hire an HVAC guy that's outside your business to go do that, like he's not looking out for that. That's not something that he's trained to be aware of. So again, like the existence of the thing, whether it's a quarterly business review or in-house maintenance, the existence of the thing doesn't actually mean much to your prospect. The question is, what does it do for them? How
Right.
does it benefit them? So those are just a couple things that come to mind for me in terms of, how are people taking what they do and using that as part of their message of what's unique about their service?
I love that. For the quarterly business review, I'm a big fan of that. I think that it is absolutely
Yeah.
essential. Some of the questions that come up with that I've gotten is who does that, right? Is it the BDM or is it the
Yeah.
property manager? So I'm curious, Ben, who does that? Who, like in your mind, who carries out
Yeah.
the property review?
It's a great question. It's probably a little bit different for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's probably a little bit dependent on how you're set up, right? If you've got a portfolio manager that, they've got a dedicated book of business and they're the single point of contact, like it probably should be that person. I think that helps build the relationship. I should caveat with this. I'm not advocating that you do quarterly business reviews with every one of your owners, including the ones that just own one property. And you
Mm,
you could, sure,
mhm.
but like if you're in a pod structure, right, or a portfolio structure, and you've got this one person, like it's probably not realistic for them to get on the phone with all 250 of their clients, or
Right.
however big the portfolio is. I think one, something is better than nothing, right? So
Mhm.
if the way you're set up, you're not able to do something like that, well, is there a portion of your client base that you want to do that for, right?
Mhm.
Maybe we're going to say we're going to offer this to people that have three or more properties with us,
Right.
right? Like that's an extra benefit that they get. And maybe, I would even argue like if you're a business owner, maybe you slice off like the top 10% of all clients,
Mhm.
right? The people who have the most properties, revenue per relationship, right, is larger with those folks. And maybe you want to say like, you, I think we'll do another episode on this. But if you're doing quarterly business reviews or quarterly check-ins, whatever, you need to be asking for referrals
Oh,
in those conversations.
100%.
And so like that, I think that's a good opportunity. Either you train your people on how to do that, or as the business owner, you go through this, you provide all this value, and then you say at the end, hey, who else? Is there anybody else you can think of that would appreciate something like this, that's not getting this service, or would resonate with them, right?
And
So
also to add to that, the other question that you ask in there is who do you use as your CPA? Who's your financial advisor? Who do you use as your insurance? Who is this? That's how this turns into outbound, in my opinion, right? Is now then we're able to collect this list and I'm able to call your CPA and I'm going to say, oh my gosh, we have a client in common. It's Ben. He's awesome, right? 3 properties. You helped him do that. Do you have any more clients
yeah,
like Ben that we could work with? Like now
right,
you can take that list of vendors as well, give that over to your BDM or whoever is doing it. And now you're able to generate
yeah,
additional referral partners there to be able to make it all make sense. Because if your top ideal customers, whoever else professionally they're working with, those are the other people that you need to be networking with. Those are the people that you need to be spending your time with. And the only way you get that is by actually talking to your clients. I know that is an
yeah,
absolutely wild idea, but talking to your clients is going to give you your case studies, what's
yeah,
working really well, additional vendors for you to reach out to, and potentially new clients because people hang out with people that are like them. And so they're going to probably know at least 1 or 2 other people that are looking for property management. So
right,
doing these calls to me is like that. It helps plant your seeds for all of the outbound because then it gives you a deeper understanding of that ideal customer, really hones in your messaging. And you can't get that by just thinking about it and who you think you're serving, because a lot of times there is that gap, right, between who we are serving and who we want to be serving. And so figuring out where that gap
mm-hmm,
is and do we want to build a bridge? Do we want to fix that? How do we want to move forward? Like those are all things that I think about here as we, are
yeah,
thinking about messaging and outbound, because messaging to me, the better the messaging, the better you're going to attract people.
yeah,
So I want to talk about this whenever developing our messaging and our ideal customer is the use of AI or Chat
mm,
GPT.
yeah.
I want to just spend a moment here because I think I have a rant, Ben, that's incoming here.
Here for it.
Okay,
Let
so
me get my popcorn out.
please do. So I've had people that have come to me over the last couple of weeks and be like, "Oh, Kristen, I had to figure it out. Like I'm done. ChatGPT and we worked together. We built this out, and it has been so bad, like just bad." And the reason is because the way that you're thinking about it and the way that you enter it into ChatGPT is not going to challenge you, right? He's just going to build off of your already terrible ideas or your not terrible. Generic ideas are just going to build on top of that. So I think that getting very specific before you enter that into ChatGPT, because don't get me wrong, I love AI. I love it. It's fantastic. It helps me every single day in my life. But it's only your output is only going to be as good as your input. So if you are
Mm,
putting in, I want to work with accidental landlords, help me come up with messaging for this. 10 other people in your market are doing the exact same thing, like the exact same thing that's going to give you the same workflow, the same kind of sequence out. You need to be able to put in more specific information and really kind of dig down deep on who it is that we're working with so we can input that to output better, more relevant information to our company. A thought, Ben? Tell me.
you're way more qualified to talk about AI than I am, but I do think what I would broadly say, I agree with you, right? Like input matters significantly, right? And I think at the end of the day, what we are trying to do in sales is build relationships with people,
Oh,
right? Build trust with people. And so, yes, you could put a quick prompt into ChatGPT and you could get a message that it works, right? It's grammatically correct. It looks like, there's relevance there. Okay. But here's what I would say anecdotally that I've observed about AI in the outbound that I've gotten, the some of the posts that I've seen on LinkedIn. I hate to tell you this if you like love putting your thoughts into AI, ChatGPT, and then posting on LinkedIn, like it's pretty obvious. Like it doesn't, and there are like chat bots that like will get into LinkedIn comments. Like you can automate leaving contents because I guess that
What?
comments. Yeah, so that because it boosts your engagement, right? So people will go and make comments on everybody's LinkedIn posts, like, and basically they're just regurgitating the post, and it's so obvious that that person didn't write that message, right? So, like the overarching thing here, I think, is if you want to stand out, if you want to build relationships, if you want to build trust, outsourcing the messaging in all likelihood is probably not the answer,
Mhm.
because at the point that we're at now and the way that people are using it, it's not sophisticated enough, it's not able to work in personalization enough, or people aren't asking it to, right? I don't want to
Right.
assume. I assume AI can do it, right, if you give it the
Correct.
appropriate
You have to give it.
information.
Exactly.
Right. And so like back to this clarity around what it is that you do and how you serve people. Like you need to be specific, and it needs to spell out what's in it for them. Like why does it matter to that person? If your website screams, we've been in business for 40 plus years, we have 100 5-star Google reviews, like I hate to tell you this, but like that, your prospect doesn't care about that, right?
Mhm.
Your prospect cares about whether or not you're going to be able to deliver the service that you say you're going to deliver, whether you're going to make their life easier, whether you're going to protect their asset. Like there's a balance there, and I think people will get a lot better at using AI for some of this messaging stuff. But like, I don't know, just go to your inbox and find the last cold email that you got where it was just like generic, like gobbledygook. Like there's so much of that out there. It doesn't stand out. So there's
Yeah.
my quick rant on top of your rant.
Perfect. That was amazing because I want to pull something out of there that you said, which is why something is important to your prospect. And I think that that's something that we should examine in every point of our sales process and everything that we're saying, right? A lot of people like to brag about their owner portal. Fantastic. Every professional property management company has one. Why does that matter? Like, and I mean that in the most respectful way of why.
Yeah, of
Why
course.
does that matter? Why is it important that your clients can log in at any time and be able to see what's happening with their property? Right? It's transparency. We build this on trust. Like that's what you're trying to say by saying, "Oh,
Right.
we utilize Refiner at Folio for our owners portal. So does everybody else." Right? Like that's not something that's special now in 2025. Maybe in, 2018, 17, 16 when
Yep.
those were like emerging, it was like, "Oh, we have this. It's really cool." Now it's
Right.
not, right? You need to connect that why. And so a lot of times what I find when I'm having these conversations with clients about messaging, I am just asking them, why does that matter? Why is that important?
Right.
Why should your clients care about that? And so if there are things on your website that you are putting of, okay, so like that, we've been in business for 40 years. Why would your clients care about that? Well, they would care because we're not going anywhere. We are an established business. We have, the receipts to back up what it is that we're doing. And what that's going to allow you to do is trust us with your
Yep.
property. That's what you're trying to say by giving your statistics. But it's important to connect that to the client because they don't care. Like, unless it is very specific as to why they should care, it does not matter to them at
Yeah.
all in the slightest. And especially in outbound, you have to be so specific because you're catching people that have never heard of you, that have no trust in you, and you're trying to earn an additional conversation. So if your messaging is not around why this matters to you and why I need you to give me 10 minutes of your life to explain this to you, you're not going to have success because time is the most valuable thing that our owners have that they're
Mhm.
working that they have in general, right? That we all have. And so
Right.
your reason why you need 10 minutes with them better be so solid as to what you're going to deliver and how it's going to help them. That is what's
Yeah.
going to work. Moving forward in outbound is we have to have that messaging be so clear and specific, which goes back to our ideal customer. and the
Mhm.
messaging have to tie together so that this person will give us an opportunity to learn more about our business and see what
Yeah.
pain points we can help them solve.
I'll just to piggyback on that a little bit, I'll give you another example that I encountered recently. I was talking to somebody who is in a very, very regulated place, in terms of local laws around landlords and tenants, right? And so I think like that's another example, even though it's not like you don't have a service offering that's like legal compliance, so to speak. But what it potentially means to your customer and your prospect and the articulating the value of your service is to say, hey, there's a lot of new regulation that's coming in about what you can and can't do.
Mhm.
We stay up to date on that so that you don't have to, right? You don't have to read get on the local news every week and try to keep up with what laws are coming and how you can treat your tenant, how quickly you need to give notice about, rent increases. Like, I think if you live in a place where there is a lot of regulation or even regulation is increasing, like I think of that as a perfect edge of like a way that you can weave the value of your service, especially into your outbound messaging. Because the reality is like, let's say there's a new bill coming. I've noticed there. It's not that nobody does this. I've seen people do this really well in terms of the content that they put out. Like if you were like, just like, hey, there's a lot of new laws coming, like very broad about what you're saying, it probably doesn't move the needle much for your prospect. But like, man, if there was a new law that was in city council being discussed next week about something related to landlord tenant law, like, man, that's a gold mine for outreach to
Right.
be talking about. Like, you're a resource. You're making them aware of something that it wasn't likely on their radar at all. And oh, by the way, like the implication of it potentially impacts their financial future, right? Because if you
Mhm.
do something you're not supposed to do, or a tenant, files a lawsuit, complains, right? Like now we're going on the rabbit hole of really, really bad outcomes. So I think you want to take a really critical look at not only your operation, but the geography that you're in, the market, what's happening, and be able to pick out even a few things that are real differentiators that mean something to your customer, right? Like, I think a lot of things that people implement in their business, in a lot of ways, it's making their life easier as the property manager. And I hate to tell you this, but most of the time, like if that doesn't have any benefit to your client, you don't need to talk about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, just because it makes your life easier doesn't what's the impact for the end user, right? What's the impact?
Absolutely.
So that's my little soapbox about differentiators and
All
technology.
are extremely valid because I think the biggest thing there, just on the last point that you said there is you may think something is really cool, but your customers don't care. Like they do not care because at the end of the day, people, especially our customers, right? They're selfish. We're all selfish. We want to make sure that what we're doing and what we're investing in is going to produce a return for us. And so make it make sense for them. Make it make sense. That is the biggest thing at the end of the day. And it has to be specific. And so I think the best way to do this, right? We want to give these actionable items. If you don't
Yeah,
know who your ideal customer is, or you
yeah,
don't know what problems you're solving, you as the business owner should set up a call with your top 5 clients that you love managing for, that you love managing their properties, and you ask them, you interview them. What have we helped you do? What have we accomplished together? How has this been able to impact you? And that starts to create, oh my gosh, to craft your brand messaging there to be able to figure it out what it is that we're doing. Because a lot of time in this, marketing comes into play. I don't know how to market. Marketing essentially is storytelling. At our level, we're telling stories.
hmm
And so if
yeah,
you're able to articulate the stories of your top 5 clients that you have all of your content that you need for the rest of the year. You have the additional vendors that you need to go out and you need to make sure you're securing relationships with. You have everything that you need to be able to take your business and go and do outbound because you know specifically the value that you are providing, not what you think that you're doing, but the actual feedback. of what people are telling you that you have done for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's back when I sold insurance, there was a framework that a consultant we worked with gave us. And this was around asking, it was more along the lines of asking for referrals, but it's the
Mm,
same concept. And what you just said, people should absolutely be asking for referrals as they're doing this. But it's sort of like you want to take them back through their journey with you.
mm,
Kristen, we've been working together for about 5 years. I'm just, I'm trying to get a better understanding of where our clients see the most value. What are the things that are most important to them? I want you to think back to 2020, 5 years ago when we started working together. What prompted you to reach out to us in the first place? Like what was kind of the trigger that led you there, right? Bad experience with the previous property manager, self-managing, and it got too crazy. Like you're starting to pull out some of these things by being that specific. And
mhm.
then, maybe even like, hey, Kristen, and were you talking to other property managers? Like what pushed you over the edge to hire us? Like, man, that is a gold mine to understanding who your customers are and what they appreciate. And then you just kind of take them right through. Maybe even like, do a little bit of research on what's happened over the last 5 years. Hey, you, I saw that we replaced an HVAC system and it was like this, it was kind of a big ordeal, like vendor, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, what could we have done better? Maybe, right?
Mhm.
Like was there anything about that jumped out at you that stood out from that experience? Right. Like, I think you're able to pull, I mean, you don't want to get that negative in terms of past experiences, but like, think about like problems you help them solve is what
Sure.
I'm getting here. So just some additional thoughts on that. But I love that. I mean, talk to those longtime clients, those people that, you know, have the trust level with you, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe they're getting your Christmas card every year.
Right? That is the level of information that you need to have before you go use AI to help you craft the message. You need all of these pieces and you have to dig deep. Like that is the biggest thing that I think is my takeaway from this episode is you have to go deeper than you think that you do. You really need to get down to specifics of problems that you're solving, people you're helping, how you're helping them, why that's important to them. And those pieces there give you the building block to know exactly who your ideal customer is. And then how you need to go out and find more of them because those are the pieces is who are we messaging? Who are we I'm sorry, who are we talking to? And
Yeah,
why do we need to find them? How do we find them? That's outbound in a nutshell, is we're going to find more of those people.
that's right. Well, and I think too, like if you were to go through a process like that where you talk to your team, you thought critically about your services and what the impact is, and you talk to current customers, got a better understanding from them. I think the other effect that's going to happen there is like you are going to come away with a conviction of I have to get out. Like there are people out there that need this. Like there are folks that are stuck in the mire of bad experiences and their lives being consumed by the problems and challenges that come with owning rental property, right? Like they need to know who I am. They need to know what
Yeah,
we do, right? Like we can make their lives better, right? Because I think a lot of people naturally their mind oftentimes can go to like, oh, I don't want to bother people. Or yeah, I don't want to spam people. And it's like, well, if you think about it that way, then yeah, it's going to be really hard to commit and execute long term. But if your mindset is, I have something that's valuable, I know it works because I know it's helped other people, and now I just need to find more people to help. That's the sort of mindset that's going to carry you long term. And when you're going through periods where you're not getting a lot of response, people aren't getting back to you, they're hanging up on you, like you need to go back and reference that, right?
absolutely.
Because otherwise you're just going to quit. So,
Oh, that's so good. So good. That's
yeah.
fantastic. All right, Ben. So wrapping up this episode here,
Yeah.
final thoughts for the folks. What are your takeaways? What should people go and do? What advice do you want to give at the end here?
I'll steal from you a little. Be more specific than you think you need to be, right? Get real clarity around who you're trying to serve and how you can help them. What's in it for them, right? you deliver a great service, the way that you do that in and of itself is not going to resonate. What's the problem that they have, and how are you
Mm.
fixing the problem? How are you making their life better? And then the last thing I would say is don't be afraid to get feedback from your best clients. I think a lot of people have this mindset of like, I don't want to talk to my owners. If I get an email, it's a bad thing. Like a conversation like that is actually a great touch point. Like that's a
Mhm.
relationship building trust building interaction. Whereas if you think about the majority of your interaction with your owners, a lot of times it's question about their owner statement or talking about a maintenance issue. Like it's good to have positive touch points. So what about you? I could probably list off like 5 to 10 things that we talked about that I think are takeaways, but I'll leave it at those three.
No, I think that just to continue my consistency here, it's never as hard as you think that it's going to be. This can be
Mm,
built up in your head as
mm,
something being incredibly difficult, but you have the answers and they exist within your current owners now. So
yeah.
make the phone call, have the conversation. I recommend a personal touch point here, no matter how your business is structured. I don't care if you ever talk,
Yep.
like never talk to owners. This should be a phone call, not a form. You will get better answers, better feedback, and
Mm,
more context by having a phone call with your best clients. Go out, find that information, and then take that and just center everything else you do around that because you will find more customers whenever you're doing it in that way.
that's it. I love it. Yeah, oftentimes the thing that's less convenient and takes more time, the result is going to be a lot better than sending a form or, hey, will you reply to this email? Right? Have a
Absolutely.
conversation. I love it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Kristen, this has been a great episode. Thank you for your insight, and we will look forward to seeing you guys on our next episode in 2 weeks.